Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Coming to Independent Lens.
To be or not to be, that is the question.
Hard work and determination. Strong qualities in any teenager.
I have to finish school. That is not a choice.
But when you're homeless, they are essential.
I really want to go to college.
Join Alaska Public Media on Friday, April 17th from 12 to 1 p.m. for a screening of The Homestretch, chat, and conversation about homeless teens. More at alaskapublic.org.
The National Weather Service.
Hello and welcome to Alaska Weather. This is the Thursday edition on April 16, 2015. I'm meteorologist Kimberley Hoeppner, and in just a moment we'll be underway with your aviation, marine, and public forecasts. When we're not here, you can always get our information, and that's available at www.arh.noaa.gov, or you can simply type in weather.gov and navigate to the destination of your choice just by clicking on the map. You can also get our information from the Weather Information line. That's available for you at 1-800-472-0391. And if you go to our webpage, feel free to check out the social media that's available through there, and that provides the Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter links just from our webpage. Now on to the hot topic of the day, fire weather. We're starting to forecast the fire weather across the Southwest, and this is starting for tomorrow, 4/17/2015. This is a picture here courtesy of KDLG of a fire that occurred just earlier yesterday. And as you can see, fire weather season is on its way. Grass fire, this started from a grass fire and progressively took over two buildings. So please be aware as we go into the spring with the lack of snow cover, that grass is very easy to ignite, especially with lawnmowers, cars, and vehicles, anything that can cause a spark. So let's make sure we don't set a fire, and if we do, let's stay on top of it very quickly. Now on to the topics for this upcoming weekend. We have a storm system that's developing in the North Pacific on Friday. That's going to be important for you across the entire state, and you'll see that effect in just a moment. We'll have some strong winds across the Southwest and developing across the Western Gulf as well. This is going to bring a rain and snow mix across the western areas and rain across the south, and we'll see warmer temperatures surge in through the state, and this is going to occur by Friday night. Now let's go and look out at the satellite. First, taking a look over the Bering, you can see there's a widespread cloud cover going on, and the low pressure system in the Pacific that I'm talking about that's going to be developing is right here just to the south of the Unalaska area. So let me take and loop this. You can see there's a little bit of a curvature around the comma cloud that is developing, and there's another low pressure system just across the northwestern Bering here, a circulation, but this is in the process of dying. So we'll see this taper down in the next few days here. So here's the prefrontal conditions across the Unalaska area extending back towards the western areas of the Gulf from a front that's diminishing over here. So we have this plume of cloud cover that's making it towards the east with a plume just stretching from a northwest to southeast direction. And then across the Gulf of Alaska, we had a front that had pushed inland overnight, bringing some showers there, mainly just some scattered shower activity. As you can see across the Gulf, it doesn't look like there's too many clouds, but these are all showers that are continuing to develop around low pressure system and also across the southeastern areas during the afternoon hours. So looping this one more time, you can see the advancing of the front towards the Alaska Peninsula here in the southwest, and then taking a look at your surface map from earlier today, this was a 984 millibar low, and this front is already starting to occlude with some very cold temperatures wrapping around the backside of the system. In the meanwhile, we have some warmer temperatures right ahead of this as the jet stream is pulling some warmer air mass up So looking off to the east, we have a weak boundary, and this is where all the showers are kind of initiating and then moving up into the northern Gulf areas and back towards the Susitna Valley. We also have showers that are extending on this weak trough all the way through towards the Dixon entrance. Across South Central, the interior areas of the state earlier today, they saw some light snow activity, but this is kind of tapered off during the afternoon hours, and they broke out of the clouds for a little bit. Some light snow along the north slope, mainly tapering off this afternoon. However, areas of fog is continuing back towards the Bering Strait. And here is the Bering cloud cover across the entire area, with this weak low pressure system beginning to lose this front that was around it. Now looking off towards Shimea, another weak low pressure system here, that's helping to pull this cold air down, and this is what's going to help feed into this low pressure system. So we'll see some really just some isolated snow showers on the backside of this low pressure system. But look along the northern edge of this front, the pressure in millibars around it is beginning to tighten just to the south of the Alaska Peninsula and the south side of Kodiak Island. This is going to be bringing a southeasterly flow along the frontal edge here. And we'll see some light precipitation just out ahead of the system, and that'll mainly be in the form of a mix of rain and snow along the Aleutian Chain tonight and the Alaska Peninsula, with a few isolated snow showers making it out ahead of the front. Otherwise, just showery conditions across the Gulf waters, with a couple showers making it inland, but mainly tapering off during the overnight hours. This low pressure system will remain across the central areas as well, so isolated snow chances will linger through the night, and across the northern slope back through the northwest, expect colder temperatures to be coming on the backside of the low pressure, feeding into the northern areas of the Bering. And there we'll just see mainly areas of fog with isolated snow activity across the northwest coast. Now, looking into your Friday forecast, this low pressure system is going to deepen to 977 millibars with a very tight pressure gradient out ahead of the system. Across the western areas of the Gulf, we'll be seeing winds increasing during the afternoon hours across the Gulf waters between 30 and 40 miles per hour, with higher gusts between 50 to 60 miles per hour across the western areas of the Gulf later on your Friday. Now, across the southern areas of the Bering, the Alaska Peninsula and the eastern Aleutians, they're going to have a southeasterly flow on the far eastern side of the peninsula and northerly flow on the backside of the low pressure system. And the winds mainly here are going to be between 25 to 35 miles per hour, with higher gusts between 50 to 55 miles per hour. So the strongest gusts staying ahead of this frontal area. And in the meanwhile, the southeastern areas will break out of the shower activity for a short while before this front comes. So maybe a little bit of clearing during the afternoon hours, allowing temperatures to warm up there, and across the central interior as well, breaking up into isolated activity during the afternoon hours, mainly around the mountains. Some shower activity lingering across the northern slope, with low pressure staying right along the northern areas. Areas of fog will continue across the Arctic Ocean area and then back towards the Bering Strait. So expect foggy conditions there, and mainly low clouds across much of the western areas of the Bering. Now, as we head into your Saturday forecast, looks like a very wet pattern all across the Gulf waters, back through the southwest, and most of the shower activity is going to stay along the coastal areas and the southeast, where the southeast will also see the winds increasing in their areas between 35 to 50 miles per hour, with the gusts across the eastern areas of the Gulf and across the inner channels there. Across the central interior, they will be seeing wind gusts across the area of the mountains between 30 and 50 miles per hour. We'll see very warm temperatures just pulling up through the state and on up towards the northern Alaska range. So across the northwestern areas, expect some gusty winds from the east and northeast wrapping around to the north. The Bering will be very gusty out of the north that day, with a mix of rain and snow. weaker activity across the western areas with light snow activity behind the system. Very cold temperatures, mainly a snow showery condition. So the main impacts as we head into Friday night into Saturday is going to be across the eastern Aleutians towards the central areas of the Gulf of Alaska and on into the southeast on Saturday. Now let's look at your temperatures today. Very mild across all the coastal areas, mainly in the mid-40s today. Eagle saw a high temperature of 53 during the afternoon hours. A little bit colder to the north. The central area saw temperatures mild again today in the mid-30s. Across the North Slope areas, they ranged from the mid-20s and dropped very quickly back to the single digits, with Point Lay getting up to 4 degrees today from Barrow to Point Lay, and in the teens still across much of the southwest. Across Bristol Bay, back up into the mid-30s, and across the Alaska Peninsula in the 30s as well. For the Bering, just slightly warmer in the central Aleutians there, hitting up into the upper 30s. Looking at your temperatures for tonight, we're going to be below zero across the north and the northwest, back through the southwest, slightly warmer in the mid-20s. Across the central areas of the state, also in the 20s. Along the coast, expect that to get to near freezing or just above, with the Aleutians near freezing as well. The southeast will be the warmest in the mid-30s to the lower 40s. Looking at your high temperatures tomorrow, another warm day across all the areas, as well as the upcoming weekend, with single digits again across the areas of the North Slope back towards the Seward Peninsula. Southwest will start creeping up a little bit warmer as well into the mid-20s. Now your flying weather for tomorrow, you can see MVFR, IFR conditions statewide, mainly in the morning hours, and then across the southeast and along the Gulf, IFR conditions, MVFR possibly persisting through the afternoon as that next system starts moving through. Along the North Slope and towards the coast, we'll expect to see mainly fog conditions and therefore IFR for much of those areas. The MVFR, IFR conditions will persist with low pressure staying across much of the Bering through your day tomorrow. Now looking at your passes in more depth, we have Anaktuvik going from MVFR to VFR possibly in the afternoon, and Adigan will go MVFR to VFR possibly in the later part of the afternoon. Lake Clark and both Merrill Pass will be IFR to MVFR conditions, rainy MVFR, windy will be MVFR, and Isabel VFR and dropping to MVFR later in the day. Mentasta will go MVFR later to VFR in the afternoon. Tanita from IFR to MVFR. Portage at IFR most of the day, and we'll see Chilkoot and White Pass both MVFR and VFR. So we'll see the freezing levels hanging right along the coast again for the morning hours and back towards the southern areas of the Bering, and then slightly warmer across the central Bering and cooler temperatures, freezing levels down near Shimia, and then the 2,000 to 4,000 foot level just staying well south of the Gulf of Alaska still. Now your icing tomorrow, be concerned across the lingering low pressure system across the central areas of the state back towards the Kuskokwim Delta and up towards the Seward Peninsula. Also below 7,000 feet is the area concerned around the Alaska Peninsula, western areas of the Gulf, as we head through the day tomorrow for icing all the way back towards the eastern and central Aleutians. Also, the jet stream flow tomorrow is mainly an enhancement in the flow that we've seen previous days, as we have 3 troughs that are just kind of bouncing across the northern tier of Northern America. And then looking at your low pressure system out towards the Aleutian chain, we have the strongest winds tomorrow developing at 9,000 feet between 40 to 55 knots to the south. Southerly flow across the state and then turning towards the east across the southeast. And on the backside of the system, northerly flow across much of the Bering, change of direction here across the southern areas of the Bering, with the stronger flow again at your 3,000 foot level between 50 to 70 knots out ahead of this system as you get towards the southwest and Kodiak Island, between 50 and 60 knots here, with 30 to 40 knots out of the north on the backside. Southerly flow across the state, but a little bit change of direction, so this could be a turbulent area where you have more of a southeasterly flow at the lower levels. And then across the southeast, mainly a south flow between 15 and 20 knots, so not too bad early in the day tomorrow. And then across much of the state, a southerly flow turning towards the east, towards the northern parts of the state, and more of a westerly flow just off the surface on the northern slope there. Now looking at your turbulent conditions tomorrow, mainly directional in speed shear across the southern tip of the Kenai back towards the Alaska Peninsula, and then you'll have concerns all the way out through the central Aleutians and the central Bering as this low pressure system moves to the north. And this is all going to be mainly below the 6,000 to 8,000 foot level. So in just a moment, we'll be back with a recap and your marine forecast.
Albedo. Greetings, fellow stargazers. I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida.
And I'm Dean Regas, astronomer from the Cincinnati Observatory. Although the Moon, Venus, and Jupiter are often the brightest objects in our night sky, did you know that the Moon isn't as bright as you think?
Plus, 2 of those bright objects are on their way to a super close encounter in a few months. What are we talking about? Let's show you. Alrighty, we have our skies set up for just after sunset in the early part of next week, facing west. On Tuesday, April 21st, you'll see a slender, waxing crescent moon among the stars of Taurus the Bull. As the sky gets darker, you may see a phenomenon that is often referred to as the old moon in the new moon's arms. If you look at the dark portion of the moon, you'll barely make out the pattern of the man in the moon hiding in the darkness. And you can spot this every month within a few days after new moon.
That's right, James. What you're seeing is called Earthshine. This happens when sunlight reflected from the Earth illuminates the nighttime side of the moon. Typically, this results in the moon's nighttime side being bathed in a soft, faint light.
We astronomers use the term albedo to describe the reflectivity of a planet or moon. When the moon is full, it seems like the brightest thing around. In actuality, the moon has almost the same reflectivity as charcoal. You might be surprised to know that the moon's albedo is a pitiful 0.136. This means that barely 14% of the sunlight striking the moon's surface is reflected back into space.
Earth's albedo is a little larger. Since we have fluffy white clouds and continents that are occasionally covered with snow, Earth's albedo is at 39%, or 0.39. Venus, however, wins on the reflectivity scale. Since Venus is perpetually covered in a thick layer of clouds, it has an albedo of almost 70% at 0.69.
If the moon's albedo were that high, we probably wouldn't need streetlights.
And looking at the stars would be nearly impossible during the gibbous and full phases of the moon.
Hooray for charcoal-colored moons!
Now, if that weren't exciting enough, did you know that the boundary between the daytime and nighttime side of the moon actually has a name? We astronomers call it the Terminator.
Hasta la vista, baby.
No, not that Terminator.
Oh.
But we'll be back. On April 21st, take a look to the right of the moon and you'll see our sister planet Venus, named after the Roman goddess of beauty and love. When Venus is visible just after sunset, we early evening stargazers like to call Venus the evening star.
And when Venus is visible just before sunrise, we early morning stargazers refer to Venus as the morning star. As the weeks pass, you'll notice that Venus is slowly making a trek across the sky to a close encounter on June 30th with the second brightest planet in the solar system, giant Jupiter.
Even though Jupiter is many times farther from us than Venus, Jupiter is bright because not only is it covered with clouds, it's huge.
Jupiter is almost 88,000 miles in diameter and has an albedo of over 50% at 0.52. So, on most nights when Jupiter is on the same side of the sun as we are, Jupiter rivals Venus in brightness. The trick for telling Jupiter from Venus with the naked eye is that Venus is always near the sun because it orbits closer to the sun than we do.
Jupiter, on the other hand, has a larger orbit than we do, so it can appear up to 180 degrees away from the sun in the sky. However, no matter where Jupiter appears in the sky, it's always dimmer than Venus.
As our position in the solar system changes, the planets, which are also orbiting the sun, will appear to change position against the background stars.
So as our perspective changes, Jupiter will appear to rise earlier and earlier, and Venus will be setting later and later.
And on the night of June 30th, they'll appear right next to each other in what we call a conjunction or a super scoochie. So mark your calendars.
So get outside and soak up some reflected sunlight from the 3 brightest objects in our night sky:
The Moon, Venus, and Jupiter. Keep looking up.
All right, and welcome back to the show. Now on to your ice forecast. And we'll take a last look at Cook Inlet. This will be the last reporting day for Cook Inlet as the ice is cleared out of the inlet other than the rivers that are draining some ice into it. So that is not going to be an issue as we head into the summer now. So taking a look over at the Bering, however, we will see ice growing through the next 2 days. So be on the lookout if you're in those crabbing areas across the sea ice edge, as we'll have some gusty winds and probably some freezing spray issues that you'll want to look out for. Now taking a look at your southeastern marine forecast for Friday, we'll see mostly a southerly flow, no major craft conditions. We'll see seas 3 feet across the inner channels, and the outer waters will see between 8 to 9 feet, however. And then looking at your Saturday forecast, this is where we're going to see the most impacts with gale warnings across the north and eastern areas of the Gulf. We'll see winds mainly out of the southeast here between 30 and 45 knots, strongest there to the north. Across the inner channels, northern Lynn Canal, we'll see a northerly flow, 25 knots, small craft there, northerly flow, 20 knots across the southern Lynn Canal, and then out of the southeast as you head towards the Dixon entrance. And then we'll see the inner channels between 4 to 5 feet. And then the seas across the outer waters will be between 16 to 21 feet. Looking at your western areas of the Gulf and Prince William Sound, we'll see a southerly flow in these areas out of the south to southeast between 20 and 35 knots. Gale warning criteria across the northern and western areas of the Gulf. Storm warnings across the western areas of the Gulf over towards the southern tip of the Kenai, the Barren Islands, out of the east to southeast direction. And then you'll see a northerly flow across the inlet, and that's going to be between 15 to 30, and across Shelikof also 45 knots, as well as south of Kodiak Island. Seas will be tricky on this day, 4 feet across the Sound, and then the western Gulf will be between 9 to 17 feet, across Shelikof around 13 feet, and like I said, 20 feet across the Barren Islands where we have storms there, and then 3 to 8 feet across the inlet. Looking at your Saturday, looking for slightly improved conditions across most of the area. However, the Prince William Sound will see an easterly flow gusting up to 40 knots and 50 knots still across, a stronger flow across the northeastern areas of the Gulf. And then gales across much of the western areas of the Kenai and the eastern areas of the Kenai out of the southeast, and then Shelikof and around the island will be around 30 knots out of the southeast. Once again, a northerly flow across the north and southern inlet, and then we'll see seas here between 7 to 8 feet, 8 feet across the Barren Islands, 13 feet across Shelikof Strait, and then the western areas of the Gulf will be between 15 to 25 feet. Looking at your forecast across the Alaska Peninsula, a strong gusty wind day here with freezing spray across the Bristol Bay area with an easterly flow across most of that area, gales along the Alaska Peninsula, and then we'll see seas here between 7 to 13 feet across the Bering side and 14 to 15 feet across the Pacific side. And then on Saturday, conditions will generally be around the gale warning criteria, again with the seas between 7 to 13 feet and then between 15 and 16 feet across the Pacific side, all out of the south to southeast direction. Across your Aleutians here, we're going to see a northeasterly flow becoming more north as you head towards Shimia, and we'll see gale criteria across the central and eastern part of the Aleutians. Seas will be between 10 to 15 feet across the Bering and around 15 to 20 feet across the Pacific side. Looking at your Saturday, we'll see a slight change in the wind directions, more out of the north and northwesterly directions, small craft to the west and gales to the east. And your seas this day would be between 10 and 20 feet across the Bering side and between 12 to 17 feet across the Pacific side. Looking at your western conditions, we'll see a north to northeasterly flow here, all small craft, with freezing spray along the ice edge. And we'll see between 7 to 11 foot seas near the Pribilof central areas and the western coast there. And your Saturday forecast, very strong winds again. Freezing spray will be an issue. Winds become more north-northwest across the northern Bering here, and we'll see gales once again. And looking at your northwest and northern coast, a little bit lighter wind speeds, east becoming to the northwest towards Kotzebue Sound on Friday, and then very similar conditions, slightly higher speeds, easterly direction across the Beaufort Sea coast and back towards Kotzebue Sound, it becomes more north. Taking a quick recap at your forecast for tonight, we have this developing very strong low pressure system. It's going to increase wind speeds across the Alaska Peninsula and the eastern areas of the Aleutians, bringing light snow conditions across the Bering areas and a mix of rain and snow across the Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula. Light rain showers will still continue across the southeast and areas along the Gulf with the colder temperatures, changing over to isolated snow showers for tonight, as well as across the central. Across the northern areas of the state, expect patchy fog to continue across the coastal areas as we head into your Friday. Very strong winds are going to increase across much of the Gulf locations, bringing rain and snow. Across the interior, a little bit drier in these areas with a lingering trough across the northern tier of the state and patchy fog continuing. Low pressure just still continuing to weaken out to the west, with snow conditions continuing through your Saturday and very warm conditions pulling in through the state. Gusty winds all across the southern areas of the state, including the southeast. So be on the lookout for this storm system as you get ready for your weekend. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Coming to Independent Lens.
To be or not to be? That is the question.
Hard work and determination. Strong qualities in any teenager.
I have to finish school. That is not a choice.
But when you're homeless, they are essential.
I really want to go to college.
Join Alaska Public Media on Friday, April 17th from 12 to 1 p.m. for a screening of The Homestretch, chat, and conversation about homeless teens. More at alaskapublic.org.